Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Careers in Science panel. My name is Corey White. I'm an employer relations partner on our career services team. And I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation now. All right. So as folks are kind of jumping in here, we'll go ahead and get started. We have quite a lot to get through tonight. So again, welcome everyone to the Careers in Science panel. My name is Corey White. I'm with the Employer Relations team here at Southern New Hampshire University on the Career Services Department. And I wanted to also quickly introduce some of my co-facilitators tonight. So we have Kelly Tripleton Hunter, who is a technical program facilitator here with our science programs, as well as Tyra Brown, who is an associate dean in our STEM vertical programs, and Sam Morissette, who's an academic advisor. And just a couple of quick housekeeping items tonight. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is very important to us as our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. And if there are aspects of this presentation, its design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, you can please notify the following resources below. And I just wanted to kind of go over and set the stage for the format tonight for our panel. It's going to consist of moderated questions and a lightning round that'll be moderated by Tyra. And then we're going to kind of get into the Q&A portion of the discussion. If at any time you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll have our staff and the panelists available to answer those questions. And then if you feel comfortable during the Q&A portion of this presentation, you can unmute yourself and ask your question directly to one of the panelists. Now let's go ahead and get started with introducing our panelists. So first up, we have Chelsea Herzog from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Chelsea, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Hi, I'm Chelsea Herzog. I work for the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection Site Remediation Program. I'm an environmental specialist, and I oversee the investigation and cleanup of contaminated sites within the state of New Jersey.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Dr. Cartledge, or Matt Cartledge. I work for Prince William County Public Schools in Northern Virginia. We are part of the Washington, D.C. Metro. For the school division, I serve many roles. Among them are Enterprise GIS Administrator, and I also serve the role as a demographer to project how many students we will have in our organization as it's constantly growing and evaluate whether or not our existing infrastructure can accommodate it. Aside from Prince William County Public Schools, I also have a consulting firm that provides demographic forecasting services to other K-12 institutions. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Amy Farnham from the state of New Hampshire, could you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Would be happy to. Hello, everybody. I work for an agency called the Department of Admin Services, and the purpose for us is to serve all the other state agencies. So my work involves helping the state government to serve its citizens. And my job is to process stuff, basically. So the waste management aspect of science. Some things that I do on a daily basis is to run a retail store that processes stuff, to process different commodities that we sell on the market for stuff, and lots of other things that I hope you'll ask about.
Thanks so much, Amy. Next up, we have Jenny Lambert from Nobis Group. Jenny?
Hi, I'm Jenny Lambert. I work at Nobis Group here in Concord, New Hampshire, and I am by training I'm a hydrogeologist, and so my background is in geology and hydrogeology in environmental consulting. I am also the head of the department for our environmental group. So I am on both the technical side and the administration managing people side, and I also manage a few projects as well. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jenny. Brendan Clifford from New Hampshire Fish and Game. Brendan?
Hi, my name is Brendan. I'm a wildlife biologist with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, and specifically with the Non-Game and Endangered Wildlife Program here within our wildlife division. I spend a lot of my time doing research on some threatened and endangered species we have, as well as some management of some conservation work that we do with them, for specifically for piping plovers and least terns on the beach, and also for several threatened and endangered snakes that we have. I also work with permitting and with our scientific permits.
Great, thanks so much, Brendan. And last but not least, Ted Walsh with the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Ted?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I'm Ted, work for the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. I'm in the Watershed Management Bureau. I'm their surface water monitoring coordinator and primarily oversee numerous river and stream monitoring efforts and how those streams pertain to water quality standards, and also pretty involved in permitting for things like hydropower facilities.
Great, thanks, Ted. Appreciate that. All right, so now we're going to get into the moderated portion of the questions, and I'm going to hand it over to Tyra Brown, and take it away, Tyra.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey, and thanks to our panelists and everyone who's here attending today. So I'm going to start off with just a few kind of quick questions and just to learn a little bit more about you and how you got into the role that you're in. So I'll start with maybe Ted, and then we'll work our way backwards from the introductions. If you can tell the audience a little bit about your educational background and how you came into your role that you're currently in, and kind of talk about the career path that you took.
Sure. Well, I got my undergraduate degree in political science and a minor in environmental studies at Colby College in Maine. And I got a master's degree in forestry from the Yale School of Forestry. My career took kind of a winding path. Out of college, I started working in a lot of environmental advocacy groups. I was early on one of those people knocking door to door, begging for money for places like the League of Conservation Voters and Clean Water Action and things like that. And then I went to graduate school. And after graduate school, I took a little detour and I actually worked in I used the political science side of my education, and I worked for the governor of New Hampshire at the time for 6 years. And after her tenure in government as governor was over, I learned enough about state government that I pursued a job at DES and managed to get a job at DES, start kind of part-time and work my way up, and have been there for, I don't even know how many years, lots of years, 15, 16 years, something like that. And like I said, primarily throughout that period, focusing mostly all my work's been in the river and stream world and monitoring efforts. But we work as a group out of our limnology lab, so we also, plenty of work in things like lakes and wetlands as well. And I do a lot with managing and overseeing interns. So that I have that's one of my big reasons and interests in that I'm being here, is that we hire an army of interns every summer. So.
Excellent. While we have you, Ted, I'm curious, what do you look for in interns? Are you looking for folks who are currently working on their program, recently graduated, and what are some of the types of projects and work that they do?
Well, most of the internships are all field-based, so you're really out in the field. We have a comprehensive monitoring strategy that we implement, and we rely on our interns to help make that happen. What we really look for, they're all college students. Most of them are, it's a summer job for the most part, from when you get out of school to when you have to go back. We'll sometimes have seniors who will stay on for a little bit longer. Really what we're looking for is, a general interest in, obviously, in this field. We kind of have a minimum threshold of grades we're looking for. We do get quite a slew of applications every year, so we want students who are taking their education seriously. But we're really not necessarily looking for any extensive experience. This is really designed to be your break into the field. We know you can only have so much experience as a sophomore, junior in college. So we're really just looking for that. Maybe you've been a hard worker, but maybe it was in something completely different. You painted houses, you're a landscaper, or whatever, restaurant. But we just want students who really are looking seriously as their career, and ultimately, because you may end up getting a job at DES, we want people who will stick around if possible.
Absolutely. And we did have a question just quickly come through of whether or not those internships are paid.
Yes, they are paid. You're not going to retire on your pay for your internship, but it's a decent, I think it's around $12 an hour. So, not the best, but not the worst. So, they are paid, and it's really more, though, that you get some really solid experience into the nitty-gritty of water science and monitoring and things like that, and a lot of opportunities. You might get hired as a beach intern, but it doesn't mean you don't have opportunities to learn stuff about lakes and rivers as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I wanted to pass it off next to Amy to talk a little bit about her experience and her educational background. And I know we talked a little bit earlier last week just about maybe a career path not always being a straight path, or having a number of different types of experiences as well to be able to get some of the experience in the field. So if you can tell us a little bit about yourself too, Amy.
Of course. Well, I started in business at Southern New Hampshire University in the dinosaur age. We didn't even have online education back then. So I have an associate's in business administration and a bachelor's in marketing from SNHU. And then, ironically, I took a course called Environmental Issues Science 219, which I'm sure many of the science students have taken, as my last elective. And I had a complete and utter career shift where I wanted to do something in sustainability, but I had zero science education. So I finished my bachelor's in marketing, and I immediately started a second bachelor's from scratch at UMass Boston for Earth and Geographic Science. I'm not saying that anybody needs to do that, but I did have gaps to fill in my knowledge to serve the business community. So I finished that degree, and then I kind of continued on an academic trajectory in science, spanning business along the way. So I sit in the middle, and I had my master's at Antioch and Keene, which is an amazing experiential learning school if anybody in the area is looking for a master's degree. So that was environmental studies. And then my terminal degree was a doctorate of management in environmental and social sustainability. So kind of still down that middle road of business and science. And my professional background really has lay in business and helping businesses to have more sustainable practices and be more in line with environmental systems. And so systems is my big thing. I love to manage systems, especially when they cross over business and science. So that's kind of how I ended up with the state is that I was working in for-profit corporate work, and I decided that I kind of wanted to get more into the social side of it and serve my community. And so I started looking at state jobs. And so my job really is that middle line of helping state agencies to navigate things they might not know about science and the science requirements. And I do work closely with DES on initiatives. So it's kind of cool. I get to apply a bunch of different skill sets beyond science in what I do. And the story that I told was that I was in grad school and I was kind of lost, like, okay, I've been on this kind of wandering path. How do I get to where I want to go? And we were assigned kind of this informal book that was written by a bunch of people that were working in business in Massachusetts at MIT. And so I was looking at the resource page, which is a fantastic place to look for networking and contacts. And I reached out and I said, do you need an intern? I have some free time in my schedule. I would love to help you. And that turned into kind of my own consulting business, where I got put with waste management and other companies that needed to fill gaps in labor. So my point being, do not think that you have to walk this straight arrow of, okay, I'm an environmental scientist. I have expectations about what field work looks like. There may be other exciting opportunities to be outside that you haven't thought about. And I pulled 2 books from my bookshelf. They may not be visible, but I will give the information to the folks facilitating. And I would encourage you to go out and get some books that will help you look at outside of the box ideas about where your environmental science degree can lead you, because there's lots of opportunities you might not have thought of.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. And if you wanted to pop some of those titles right into the Teams chat, I know you're joining us from your phone right now, but we can always share that information out with the recording as well. So really appreciate it. I want to pass it off next to Chelsea, because she also works for the state and has had very different types of internship experiences during her undergraduate degree. So I'll have her talk a little bit about that and then how she kind of broke into the State Department.
So my degree is in meteorology, and I always liked environmental science, or at least the environmental aspect of meteorology. So what I did is I pursued a minor in environmental geography, and I really enjoyed it. Like, I had environmental policy class. I was like, wow, this is really cool. And when I graduated, even before I graduated, internships are hard to come by. I ended up getting an internship with one of our professors where I did data analysis for a NASA project. I analyzed data that was collected in California and Texas to help better NASA satellites with air quality. Graduated and took the first job I got, applied to everything, and I actually ended up in local government, working at a local township outside of Philly, working with their recycling program. Pretty much just taking the initiative and getting people in the community to recycle. They had a new recycling program where it was really strict. They limited the amount of trash that you can, so people really had to recycle. It was interesting, not my thing, so I expanded out into state government, and I actually had a bunch of interviews at DEP and landed in their site remediation program. At first I was like, oh, like air quality is more my thing. I'm a meteorologist. But what's interesting is most of our jobs are trainee level. So entry level, you don't need experience. I pretty much got the job because I was honest in my interview, and I said, look, meteorology is not just being wrong all the time. I have a chemistry background, I have a physics background, and my boss thought that was nice and pretty much went off of confidence. So if you see a job that you think is interesting, apply to it, because your education, any kind of internships you have, it's all relevant, and it will make you stand out and get a job that you didn't think that maybe you could get.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chelsea. And I wanted to pass it next to Brendan to talk a little bit as well. Chelsea, you spent some time out in the field. And Brendan, I know you spend out a lot of time in the field and want to talk a little bit about how you got into your role.
Yeah, I had kind of an interesting path where it's not the traditional path that a lot of people take to get into my role. So I'm a wildlife biologist here with the Fish and Game Department. But I only have an undergraduate degree, a bachelor's in science in wildlife management. I intended to get my graduate degree, but right after I graduated with my undergraduate, I landed a seasonal job with the state. It was only for one season and for I think 4 or 5 months, and then I moved on to another position with New Hampshire Audubon, and then with an environmental consulting company called Normando Associates. And then the following year, I applied again for the slew of seasonal jobs that the New Hampshire Fish and Game offers. We usually offer in the non-game program between 4 and 6. And I was able to get another seasonal position, this time in a different project. And then I had done, I like to say that I had some good circumstances, but I also need to give myself credit that I did a well enough job where they wanted to keep me on in a part-time role over the winter, but then, I could continue in that seasonal role every year. So I did that for a few years. And then a technician position opened up, a wildlife technician, and I applied for that and got that within the department. And eventually, several years after that, a biologist position came up, and I had to take an exam for, to be able to say I could be qualified as a biologist, because most people that become to this level have a master's degree or higher. But I was able to do that, and so I kind of made it along with experience more than, certainly education was important. My degree is in wildlife management, so that's kind of the field what this department does. But I also I didn't have the additional degrees that a lot of people have in my department. So I feel like it's kind of nice for students to hear that, where it's very certainly it's important, and it's nice to have a graduate degree, and certainly I say nice in quotations because it opens a lot of doors, but it's not the only route that you can take. You can go with experience, you can start low and then work your way up. So that's what I did, and I've been here for 16 years now, doing a lot of the same things over and over the years, but they've certainly progressed as I've gotten further in my career, where now I'm reaching out to communities, to land trusts, to conservation commissions, working with the general public, kind of doing all these different kind of integrated things that you would do as a biologist when you're managing endangered species and trying to protect these different habitats they're in, these different environments. So I'd be happy to certainly talk to anybody that if our contact information is provided at the end of the meeting here, certainly hit me up. And we do offer, usually in February or March, a couple seasonal positions. Now they are very competitive for the Fish and Game Department, I will say that. But we have gone outside of the box as well to hire people where people really present themselves well, they have some interesting skill set, and it is an entry level job. It's supposed to be, we're not supposed to be, but we value or certainly I value when I'm hiring, giving people the opportunity that I was given when I was, in this position, when I was just applying for seasonal positions. So certainly, I encourage anybody to apply and look for our postings.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you, Brendan. And I was wondering if we can pass it off to Jenny as well, talk a little bit about your background and kind of the career path that you took to get into your current role.
Sure. I took, I think, a little bit more of I'll call it kind of a standard career path for environmental consulting. So I started out with a degree in geology from Hamilton College, and I graduated in 2001. So that was just the bottom fell out of the economy. But I did find something, frankly, helped by the fact that I had an internship the year before. So I worked in consulting, a lot of field work, a lot of oversight of drill rigs for about 5 years. And then I always had the intention to go to grad school. And so after 5 years, I kind of said, all right, well, now that I've done a bunch of different things in consulting, what am I interested in? So I ended up going to grad school and got a master's, again, in geology, but the focus was on contamination, and my thesis was on gasoline remediation. So I was looking at organic stuff and contaminant fate and transport. So so then I finished that up, and with my incredible timing, I finished that in the end of 2008 into the teeth of another terrible labor market. So I went back to the firm I had been working for, and I moved down to Philadelphia. So I was down there for a few years, and then I came up here for a kind of a lifestyle change. And so I've been up here in New Hampshire for 8 years, and I tried to stay mostly on the technical track. So I was trying to avoid managing projects, and I manage a few projects, but instead I became a department head. So now I manage people, but I still also am working on the technical side. And so I tend to work on sort of the bigger projects, and I do work on some really cool science. And I'm still focused on that contaminant fate and transport and groundwater issues and working out all those things. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Excellent. Thank you, Jenny. And I had a quick question. As you mentioned, you were a department head. Do you work with a team of people, or what does your day-to-day look like in terms of like collaboration with others?
Yeah, so I am the head of the environmental group here in our New Hampshire office. So that's about 16 people. We're having a brand new person starting next week, so I think that takes us up to 16. So in my role, I am kind of the facilitator and coordinator and schedule and problem solver for the group. So I am sort of the primary hiring person. And so I will add that we do look for interns when we have work available, and we also are, we'll hire for whatever we need. That's from interns all the way up.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for sharing, Jenny. And we'll pass it off to Dr. Cartledge. If you can tell us a little bit about your educational background and some of the different experiences that led you into your role today.
Yeah, like some of the others on here, I took the meandering path as well. I thought that I wanted to be a doctor, and then I realized I had a really queasy stomach when it came to certain insides and internal medicine, so I became a different kind of doctor. I started off with my focus in geography. Actually, all three of my degrees are in geography, and it's kind of unusual. Most people don't start out in geography in undergrad. They find that they like it and might do a master's degree in it. But I loved it from the very beginning. And I had a very technical focus in my undergrad. Everything was GIS centric, everything was remote sensing centric. And then I moved on to a master's degree at Kansas State University, finished that in 2 years, learned how to research. The focus there was a little bit more human geography. I thought that it was interesting to better understand how people think, how cultures work, how values are generated. And surprisingly, that has been some of the soft skills that, fast forward to my career, have really paid off, maybe even more so at times than the technical skills that I possess. I think it was Jennifer said that she finished one of her degrees around 2008, and that's when I finished my undergrad, and that was a really bad time to finish a degree from the job market perspective. It's always great to finish a degree, but the job market was pretty tough at that point in time. So I went on for my master's degree, finished that in 2 years. And at that point, I realized, I really enjoy school so much that I'm going to pursue a doctorate. I thought that higher ed was going to be the finish line for me. And in a way, I've still stayed connected with higher ed. I finished my doctorate from the University of Nebraska in 2013. My focus there was really a marriage between sustainability and urban geography and the more statistical and GIS side of it. And I was very interested in how cities can grow sustainably, recognizing that they have such a voracious appetite for farmland. And as someone who grew up in Kansas and studied in Nebraska, agriculture is kind of the lifeline for those two states. So I recognize that, thinking back to my own story and how many people I graduated high school with from a small town, left the small town for opportunities to cities. And that process of urbanization requires a lot of prime farmland to be developed to accommodate those growing cities. And that's what really catapulted me into the Washington, D.C. metro area. 2013, also not a great year to finish any degree. A lot of the jobs for which I applied with Housing and Urban Development, U.S. Census Bureau, it was in the midst of a furlough, and a lot of those jobs went unfilled. But fortunately, I found an opportunity in the D.C. metro for school planning. I didn't even know the career existed. But I looked at the qualifications and I realized, understanding how populations grow, the geospatial component, it really became a good fit for me. And in this role, I would consider myself, I guess, middle management, maybe upper middle management. I have a team of 3 people who report to me, some of them administrators, some of them hourly classified people. And over the years, I've hired several GIS analysts, some temporary work, internships at times, probably not to the degree that Ted, his organization hires every summer, but, we certainly do have some opportunities from time to time. And I'd say that's kind of how I got from the beginning to where I am now. And I've been doing this role for the last 8.5 years. And it's opened up some other doors with consulting, and it's been a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Matt. So I'm looking at the time, and there has been so much really great sharing happening both, as we're interviewing the panelists here and the chat. I want to switch gears a little bit into a little bit of a lightning round so that you get to hear from all of our panelists. And they started to kind of get on the cusp of some of these skills that they're looking for with people that they're working with, or the skills that they need to possess. And so I'm going to ask each panelist, and I'll kind of really quick round robin in the opposite direction again, about maybe 1 or 2 of the hard or soft skills that you need in your role, or that you see are really important in the type of work that you do. So I'm going to pass it right back to Matt to start us off, and then we'll go real quick.
Yeah, real quick, emotional intelligence. I know it's kind of a buzzword, but seriously, buy the book, take the test, and then reassess a few months later. If you don't have a plan to improve your areas of weakness, you're just going to stay flat. I would say that's important. And then also look for credentials that you can add to your profile as a student or even early in your career. Micro-credentialing is the buzz right now. You can do that through LinkedIn Learning. If you are in the geospatial world, you can sign up for exams through Esri, the software company. And those kinds of micro-credentials really help me as a hiring manager sift through people who are applying for a job when I might not know a lot about the rigor or the particular program that you went through. Those credentials are pretty standardized. So those would be my 2 recommendations.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to go right next to Jenny. 1 or 2 hard or soft skills that you look for.
So one that we really look for that's softish is writing, because that's really hard to teach, and we really need, so we would like to see good writing skills right off the bat. So writing, for us, for entry level, we're looking for reliance and the ability to kind of stick it out, because there is field work. It's not always fun. It's often cold, sometimes cold. So we're really looking for someone who can kind of survive travel, field work. And then the other soft skill I would say is just be willing to learn new things. So that would be my lightning round.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenny. And I'm going to go right next to Chelsea. 1 or 2 skills that you feel like you use every day, or feel like really help you out.
I feel like communication, which is obviously a lot of people throw that out there, but especially when you work with the state, you work with the public, you work with your own coworkers. I work with consultants, like similar to Jenny's company. politicians. So it's really good to be able to communicate well with them, and also just to communicate science so that people who don't have that background understand it, because you definitely, in order to get the public in game, and what's the point of all this knowledge if we can't convey it to the people who don't have the same background as us. And also confidence. My boss who hired me said that when he's hiring someone that's entry level, you don't really need experience for our job. He looks for someone that has confidence. The public can be a little nasty. And you're also, working with contractors, you're kind of telling them what to do. So you need to have a confident presence to you.
Absolutely. Awesome. Good direct communication. Okay, Brendan, next.
You stole my answer. Communication was one of them. I will say a little more about it, that for me personally, I work with a lot of different stakeholders there's a lot of people that have interest in wildlife, whether it's individuals, the public, or organizations, federal agencies, state agencies, land trusts. So really being able to communicate what you're looking for and what your needs are, and also being able to listen. Listening is very important as well. It's part of communication, but I think that a lot of people don't really, for lack of a better phrase, know how to listen. Really, it's important to be able to listen to someone and to not be thinking about your response already, but really listening and taking what they're going to say and what they're saying and really processing it before you're already onto your next point. So I've found that that's helped me a lot in my career, as I've done some reading and whatnot. And I really liked, Matt, your emotional intelligence comment is very important as well. So that kind of all ties together, but really being able to communicate, listen, has really made my job easier. It's not an easy job, but it's maybe more effective as I've gotten further in my career.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, and I hear that echoed by Corey. Listen to understand. Great. I'm gonna pass it off to Ted next.
Yep. I mean, I'll just kind of build off what some people have already said. I mean, I guess when you're applying, the biggest thing is write a good cover letter, proofread your cover letter. We're not looking for, creative writing majors, but we're looking for someone who's serious. Don't sell yourself short on your resume and on your application. We want to hear everything. I think, sometimes they'll forget, like, oh, well, I actually, I volunteered for Audubon, but it wasn't a job. Like, no, that's, sell yourself on all the experience you have, show an interest. And if you get hired, we really just want people who they throw themselves into it. They're into it. They're open, their hearts and minds are open, to learning from not just the staff members, but other interns as well. They take it seriously. They own their work. And, when they make a mistake, that's fine. Just, let us know. All mistakes can be fixed and things like that. But just come in with some enthusiasm for the job and be open-minded to all the opportunities that are out there.
Cool. Thank you so much, Ted. And last but not least, Amy, if you had any hard and soft skills that you look for that you use every day.
Well, I give a unilateral ditto to everybody else that has already spoken. And I hope everybody's taking notes like I am, because that's an important listening and action skill. And emotional intelligence is a catchphrase for an important reason. Listening, stakeholders, confidence, lifelong learning. I use these every single day and have for decades. But when I'm looking or actually speaking to interns, when we're at the dialogue phase about the process, I look for initiative and examples. So do you have concrete examples of the work that you've done in the past? Don't tell me about it, show it to me. Do you have writing samples? Do you have visual goods that you can provide that showcase what you've done? And are you building a portfolio towards that to prepare yourself? Because it's not just about the piece of paper of your cover letter and your resume. It's also, you can give yourself a leg up by having that that package that you can show people. And I have heard that from people that have come out of interns with us, that has gotten them through the door, at least through advanced interviewing. And then the other is self-management, which is also kind of cliche, but time management, organization, just being able to manage a lot of things on a daily basis in an orderly way is so important to many, many careers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. So we have about 20 minutes left. I'm going to do probably one more lightning round question, and then I want to make sure we got space and time for Q&A. And so the next one is more about kind of just overall kind of hiring process for jobs that you are in or have been in. Kind of what's the typical time frame that it takes from kind of application or job posting to having, you know, feet in the door, and how has COVID maybe impacted that, if at all, for your specific organization? And I'll start with Amy, and then we'll again kind of go round robin.
In my professional experience, it depends on the industry and the urgency of hiring for a particular position, none of which you're going to necessarily understand or know about while you're applying. So it's easy to get discouraged, but I have been contacted months and months, upwards of a half a year after I've applied for a job, not thinking that I was even being considered, which isn't ideal to people's schedules necessarily, but you never know. You might have decided to step back and reevaluate your options, and then all of a sudden you have the job that you thought was the perfect job. So not getting discouraged is key when you're applying for jobs in any market, but depending on the time and the place and the position, you don't know the history of what's happening on the other side.
Absolutely, yeah, that's such a good point, is being persistent and just keep going. I'll pass it to Ted next.
Well, I'm gonna make a specific plug for our internships. Like I said, we hire kind of 12 to 16 interns this summer, and we just put in all the paperwork to kind of formally make them for the summer. So keep your eyes out, and probably won't be advertised until the later part of February. Our HR department never really lets us know. They just suddenly appear. But if you go to the DS webpage, there's an employment opportunities. And, you know, if you're serious about this is something you're interested in, you might want to check every couple of days and put in, you know, that's how you would put in an application there. So that part's pretty rapid. You know, I'm going to get handed 50, 60 resumes for 2 positions I specifically hire for. So, you know, like I said, try to stand out a little bit. You know, your grades do matter a little bit. We don't have a hard cutoff, but, you know, be nice to have above a 3.0 grade point average and above. We just have to we get so many applications. And don't be afraid to reach out, you know, find out who the hiring manager, it's not just me that's hiring, there's other hiring managers. So if there's something you're specifically interested in, find out who it is and send them an email. And I've definitely had interns get a leg up by reaching out to me directly and at least giving them an interview. You know, I can't interview 50 people. Maybe we'll interview, you know, I don't know, 8, 9 people for 2 positions. So anything like that can help you stand out. And in terms of full-time jobs at DES, you know, it'd be pretty unusual for a college student to be able to move into a full-time position directly just because of the experience required. But if you're a graduate student or anything or beyond, then, you know, look out for the employment webpage at DES. And like I said, be aggressive. Politely aggressive gets you a long way in terms of reaching out and trying to make connections with the people you need to make connections with.
That's great advice. Thank you, Ted. And how about you, Brendan? What's kind of the typical timeline for someone in your position or even on your team from application onward?
Similar to what Ted said, as far as seasonal applications, we have, I think, maybe 3 to 5, 4 to 6 in the queue right now. I supervise one of them, but they should be posted. We like to get them posted by the end of February and interview in March, so that, you know, a lot of times they start in mid to end April. And then, you know, if they're college students, we often have a soft start where they, you know, if they're still finished classes, they can do like a part-time schedule for the first month or so. But it's pretty rapid as far as like they're usually posted for 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how tight for time we are. It's just based, sometimes our jobs are very time specific for a lot of our species that we're monitoring. So we need to have somebody on the ground ready to go at certain times a year. As far as full-time positions, those are difficult to come by, as Ted mentioned. And a lot of times they're posted in state first. So other state employees have the first dibs at applying for positions a lot of times, and then they'll go out of house. But it's not unheard of that somebody's come out of graduate school and got on. And as well as seasonals being able to stay on, sometimes there's money in the budget where they can stay on at the end of the summer. So that's not unheard of either. COVID has certainly impacted our hiring. We have several positions that have been unfilled, not necessarily in the non-game program, but in other parts of our department. There was a hiring freeze initially from the governor. So we had when COVID first started. So that it's really been a kind of a slow process for some of them. It's probably like similar to a lot of other state, I know other state group organizations. So it's pretty rapid. So keep a lookout. I usually try to send out to my contacts at universities the job postings. So I can send one to Corey, since I have his email. I can send one when we post those, just as a lookout. These are our job postings, and that I try to get as many applicants as we can. Sometimes we'll have 50 or 60, 70, and we can only, like Ted said, we can only interview a couple, 5 to 10. But certainly I love looking through resumes and applications, and certainly reach out. Yeah, that's important, and it can make an impression. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brendan. And I'm going to pass it right over to Chelsea as well for working in the State Department and kind of understanding the timeline and any impacts of COVID.
For NJDEP, it can honestly take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months. If you work in the government, you'll learn that there are procedures for approval processes, and they just take time. Over the years, it's getting a little bit better where they will kind of like give you a soft offer for a job before it has its final approval. All of our jobs have to be approved by the governor. So then once the governor okays it, then they call you and give you a start date. We also had a hiring freeze. I think we might still be in it, but we had a 20-year hiring freeze before I started, and we just have tons of people retiring. Like, we can't fill positions fast enough. So we're always posting on our website. And like I said, most of our new jobs are trainee positions. So they're entry level. You don't need experience. Internships are always a plus. But yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Chelsea. And I'm curious as well to hear from Jenny and what it looks like for your type of work.
Yeah, it's funny. This is where I get to plug the environmental consulting world, because Nobis, we have 70-something people. And so I am one of 4 technical department heads. And so I have an ability to really move on resumes. My one thing is, especially with entry-level positions, unless I see somebody who's spectacular, who's just going to fit right away, I do wait to see those resumes come in, and I will get a huge pile of them for that bottom entry level. So, I might keep it open for a month or two just to see what's gonna come in, and to give people a chance to apply. So, on the entry level side, somebody who applies might get an answer in a month or so for the initial interview. But once we do that first cut, we usually move pretty fast from first interview, pick our people that we're going to go for a second interview, try and get those in pretty quick, because at that point we know we really like them. And then the goal is really, if we've got all our second interviews, we'll try and get offers out that week or the next week. So the whole process can be maybe up to 2 months for entry level, but right now we're in a labor crunch, because all of our project managers in the industry have been going into the state. So if we see a project manager or another role that's been hard to fill, I do have the flexibility to basically compress those timelines a lot. So, it may be I see the resume, we think they're great, we'll call them up, we'll get the first interview, the second interview will be pretty quick after that, so it can be as short as a week. So with regard to your question about COVID, we've gone totally virtual at this point, and it's fine. We use Teams, we have the bobbleheads on the screen. So in that case, it's actually made our job easier because we can interview people from wherever. So it works really, really well for us.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jenny. I appreciate that. And then Dr. Cartledge, we'll wrap up with you, and then we'll open it up for Q&A.
Yeah, for us, we leave positions open typically for 2 weeks to collect applications. At that point in time, I'll look through the applicants, and if we find people that have interesting skill sets and have experience that would be worthy of interviewing, we would move forward. There have been times that we've thrown out the net and haven't found anyone initially. So if you were in that initial candidate pool, it might be a little bit longer. Once we do interviews, it usually takes about 2 additional weeks to do the background check, to extend an offer, have HR negotiate salaries. So all in all, 4 to 6 weeks is fairly typical from the point at which you apply for a position. With COVID, our team has really pivoted to a remote work environment. We will get approval within the next month or so if that is the new normal for our organization. But I have hired people completely remotely before, did the interviews, the onboarding, and for a tech team like we have, it works really well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'd like to spend the rest of the time as open Q&A, and Sam, I know you had a few questions that you were gathering from the chat. If you wanted to jump in and maybe pick 1 or 2 of those out that have been rolling in to be able to be asked to the panelists, and then we'll have the panelists maybe raise your hand using the Teams feature if this one speaks to you and you'd love to jump in.
Yeah, so it seems like some interest on how the best and most professional way to mention or bring up GPA when students are reaching out about internships or just positions in general.
I can start. I mean, because we're going to ask you for your transcript. You got to tell, it's specifically part of the application.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, Brendan,
Yeah,
go ahead.
since we're also a state agency, we also ask for, it's on the application to ask for your GPA and your transcripts. It's not the end all be all as far as if you have a 3 or a 4, but if it's very low, then that might be the deciding factor.
Excellent, thank you. And then it looks like we actually have somebody with their hand raised. Kyla, if you wanted to come off mute and ask your question.
Hello. I kind of have a couple questions for Ted. What is your location, like in New Hampshire?
The Concord.
Okay. And what are the hours like?
8 to 4, but field work is field work. So we might ask you to get there at 7 one day, and we might tell you like, sorry, we're just not getting back till 5:30 because we got to go to Pittsburgh today.
Gotcha.
But you start the labs in Concord, but then you would be going statewide. We do have an office in Portsmouth that sometimes they hire 1 or 2 as well.
Okay, great, thank you. My second question was for Brendan. You mentioned before about giving your contact info out. If I'm definitely very interested and would like your information to get some more information from you personally. Okay,
yeah, I can put my email in the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you so much.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, and then Sam, did you have any other questions? If not, we can go to kind of the hand raising. But if there was a major question that came through a few times or something.
I think one of the other things was just a lot of people asking what would be good information to put in an outreach introduction email. So maybe talking a little bit about just the outreach versus the cover letter distinguishing factor there.
That's a great question. Yeah, what would you write to a hiring manager to kind of open up the conversation with your application? Go ahead, Jenny.
So what I think I would like to see for an outreach email is basically something specific to the job that you're looking for. So you may have looked on a website, and if there's something on the website that that speaks to you, definitely call that out. And somebody else had said mentioned the that some experiences that you may think are not applicable because they're not work might not go on your resume, but in fact, for reaching out, definitely mention anything. It can be volunteer experience for sure. And so one thing I will say is that at least for us, you may send out a reach out email, and I'd respond, but we have a process to so eventually I'd tell you to apply to our system on the website so that it can kind of make its way through the right channels, because we have a whole system that's overseen by humans. It doesn't actually screen anybody out, but it is used to gather all the information that we need. So you need to actually do that step of actually applying online as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Jenny. And then it looks like we have another hand raised. David, if you wanted to come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, so I actually also have a couple questions. So I'm aspiring to be a climate scientist with NASA, or perhaps the EPA or something along those lines, the more along the federal aspect of those jobs. But would the hiring process or the application process or internship process be similar to any of your organizations, or do you have any advice on how to tailor my education to make sure that I have the correct qualifications to make it to that type of level?
Go ahead, Brendan. Thanks for your question, David.
I would say I can't speak to the application process to a federal agency because I haven't done that, but working for a state agency or an agency, different, state government is obviously different than federal government, but it's a government. So that would be a good stepping stone if you could work for a state agency to get some experience that way. But yeah, that was my point. I don't know the federal government as far as what the specific application process is.
Sure, and then I'll turn it over to Matt as well. It looks like Matt and Chelsea both have their hands up to contribute here.
Yeah, David, thank you for your question. And it just reminds me of when I was applying for the federal jobs right after finishing school. And what I recall was being filtered out pretty often by the auto screeners that they use. So there are tips and strategies online that you can just Google, like, tips for applying to usajobs.com or something of that nature. And it will help you tailor your experience, your credentials to the questions being asked so that you'll have a better chance of not being filtered out by the screener and actually have your application in front of a real human being. So that would be my tip for you.
That's great advice. Thank you, Matt. And Chelsea.
Going off of what Matt said, there is a specific way for you to format your resume that helps you get through that filter. Just basic information like veterans preference. It would only apply some selective service. Things like that you have to include on there. And like Matt said, there's tons of resources. Just Google how to make a federal resume, and that will definitely help push you through. And they also have recent graduate jobs. It will say on the opening whether they're looking for recent graduates. So
excellent. Thank you for the awesome
so much.
If I could add just one more thing. If you can begin working on clearance, even basic secret clearance or top secret, Those are things that could help open up doors for federal jobs, and also with the government contractors in the DC area.
Oh, wow, okay, cool. Thank you.
Excellent. And then I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Corey if he has anything to add for any type of federal applications and things like that, and then to close us out. Really appreciate everyone's time, excellent questions, excellent advice and sharing today. Thank you to the panelists, and thank you to the everyone who was able to attend.
Thanks so much, Tyra. I put it in the chat there for you, David, but if you want to reach out to us at cocecareer@snhu.edu, we have a whole department of career advisors, specifically have a military focus, and they can help you with doing a federal resume and those types of things. That you're looking to do. But if you all don't mind, I know we have a few students with their hands raised. If you don't mind just hanging out for a couple more minutes, we can get through maybe a couple more questions and then kind of conclude the night. Is that okay with everybody? Perfect. So let's go ahead and pick someone here.
Looks like Sean.
Yeah.
Hi there, can you hear me? Okay, hey, sorry, I'll be quick. So I'm switching careers pretty later than most students, and so I'm really antsy to kind of get my foot in the door. I have less than a year left before I have my bachelor's at SNHU, and I've been applying to jobs to try to, work in the field while I'm in school, and I'm not hearing back from anybody. So I'm wondering, I know somebody mentioned earlier about getting directly in contact with a hiring manager, and a lot of the companies I'm applying to are, it's like geologists, geoscience, petrol, environmental science remediation, consulting, or mining companies, and they're a little bit larger, and it doesn't list anybody on their website. So what way would you suggest for me to try to, find who specifically to target, I guess is not the appropriate term, but who to write to in my cover letter,
It's a great question. Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to vary from, from organization to organization. You may have a little bit more luck with a smaller organization. And I know that, sometimes you can reach out if you look on the website and they have their key personnel, you may find that they may be able to, that you can tailor to them. And I just wanted to address your thoughts about starting as an older student looking to switch careers. It really depends on different organizations. I would like to think that we can be flexible, and so for us, for myself, the main thing is, we don't. If you have a long experience, we're not expecting someone to become an intern at that point. We would be looking for what your previous experience may bring to that position, and figuring out where one might fit in accordingly. For example, I got really excited about somebody who was a wildland firefighter because I was like, great, it can't be any worse than that. But no, but it was, this is somebody who's okay being outside. They have stick-to-itiveness. They seem, like they would be reliable, and they can work independently and in groups. So that person we were looking at as frankly having a fair bit more experience than pure entry level. So, I definitely think there's hope. And if you can translate what you're doing in your current work into that job, whether it's, management or communication or working outside, then that may be able to help you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Just to jump in real quick there too, Sean, I don't know if you've been on Handshake. That's our platform that we use within career services to highlight jobs and employers and events. that we partner with and work with those organizations and companies. And a lot of times in the job that they post, they'll actually put the contact person. So that's another great resource for you. So if you're not on Handshake, definitely get on there and definitely take advantage of that great resource, because we're adding thousands of jobs and thousands of employers all the time. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Corey. And it looks like Joshua.
Hi. First, I just want to thank you all for doing this. It's been very informative. But I had a question specifically for Dr. Cartledge. I'm not doing a lot of GIS in my my degree program, but I plan on getting a certificate afterwards. I was wondering if you think it's necessary to have a strong background in coding before I start a GIS certificate, or if it's kind of all encompassed in the class.
Yeah, great for you to recognize it's a very marketable skill set in a variety of fields in the environmental sector as well as in geospatial specific. I would say it's really not necessary to have a strong proficiency on coding before you start your GIS training. It will certainly help you separate yourself from other applicants if you can acquire those skill sets while you're working on your certificate or even independently. Just a little plug for SNU, we do have a geospatial programming class. I've taught that in the past and worked with a great team, Kelly included, to revamp it. So it is now using the latest industry best practices and software. So check it out if it works out for your schedule.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And I'm not sure, did we get to Sean's question? Yes. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands up, but anything that came through the chat that I may have missed?
Looks like Aisha maybe has her hand raised.
Hi. I have a question about, I don't know, can everyone hear me?
Yep, we got you.
About kind of like entry-level positions. I just graduated, and every time I go on my computer and search up the jobs that I'm looking for, all the entry-level positions have like want people who already have like 2 to 3 years of experience that are like more technical. To give you my background, I originally started with a law and politics degree at SNHU, and then I like moved into doing both that and environmental science. So a lot of my job experience has been like environmental advocacy and not so much hard technical skills. And whether or not it's more beneficial to just kind of continue studying like more certificate programs and trying to get the experience through there, because I just haven't had much luck entry-level positions in the field that are actually entry-level.
That's a really great question. Oh, go ahead, Jenny. Yep.
So in response to your question, for us, we do try to make entry level positions truly entry level. With that said, depending on the labor market, if we get candidates who have, for example, internships in kind of multiple different facets of the industry, and they have fantastic grades, and we will tend to go with those people. So there is that piece. I think on the hard science part, it kind of depends on the position. From a geology standpoint, I'm personally looking for somebody who has some level of experience with, actually seeing dirt, or, dirt's not necessarily foreign to them. But we do have flexibility for sure. So I think it kind of depends on the position. And you know, it might be easier now than it was when, you know, if we were in a big labor recession. But so I think the jobs are out there. It just takes yeah, some multiple tries to find something.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jenny. And I'll pass it to Chelsea next.
I would just say apply anyway. I know it's frustrating to repeat the same stuff in those applications, but it's like, even if it says 2 to 3 years, like, just apply anyway. It doesn't hurt, and just sell yourself on what you do have. I've learned in my interviews, like I said, for meteorology, to just be open and honest and be like, listen, most people think meteorology is about being wrong. So you can always be like, listen, I don't have the strongest technical background, but I pride myself in being a very quick learner. And if you have any suggestions on any classes to take to get me up to speed to help me with this position, I'm more than willing to do that. And just bump up, talk about all the other good things that you can bring to the position that are relevant.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsea. And I'd love to hear from Amy, not to put you on the spot, but I know that you work kind of in between science and business, and you know, coming in with a little bit of a different degree. If there's anything that you can kind of share about what it means to be kind of in between fields and kind of find your place.
Well, what Chelsea said is important, that confidence word again, and sort of being able to market yourself is a huge, huge quality when you're looking for a job. So being willing and able to speak to what you can do instead of focusing on what the job is asking you to do, and kind of speaking a language of translation. Like, this is what I've done and this is how it relates to this position, and having a portfolio in hand. Like, walking in, I can remember when I applied for this state job, I had never worked for state government before. I literally did not understand at the time, 5 years ago, how my state government worked. I'm sorry. You were poli-sci, you said, right? So that's probably horrifying. But I walked in there with printouts of everything I could find about government structure. And I laid it out on the table and I said, I literally don't know how this government works, but here's what I've done for research to get here. And I was told afterwards, but that was literally the reason I got the job. It had nothing to do with, I mean, it did have to do with technical aspects of it, but it's talking through the challenges you have in that job that you're applying for. Leverage what you know and figure out how what you know is what they need.
Awesome. Awesome advice. Thank you, Amy. And I'll pass it next to Matt.
You're on mute, Matt.
Matt, you're muted, yeah.
It flashed and said you're talking and nobody's listening. So to build on what Amy was saying, really great advice to showcase yourself and to do it across in a humble way, yet also being confident in what you do know. And one of the ways that I really like seeing people showcase themselves is either through creating a story map using Esri's platform and being able to share that link with the hiring manager. Also, you could use GitHub to show some projects that you've worked on, even if it's a school project, right? I mean, you led that project from beginning to end. It speaks to your project management skills. It shows your ability to notate and pay attention to detail. I definitely encourage you to consider doing some of those types of skills. And you also get to leave it with the hiring manager after your interview is over, or even if you didn't get the interview and you're just an applicant, they get that time to really dive into your work. And that'd be my recommendation for you.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. And Brendan.
I know this has been a great question and a lot of great answers. I'll just say I'll reiterate the importance of the cover letter, certainly showcasing yourself in that. That's what we're going to read a lot of times. Honestly, when we're going through resumes and cover letters and applications, if we get 60 to 70, we're looking for things that stand out. Where we can't really spend 10 minutes on each resume. I mean, you just can't do it with that amount of time. Those amount of resumes and cover letters. So that's important. The micro skills, I think that Matt alluded to early on, are very important. That's actually how one of the reasons I was able to get my position, I think, or I was told, is, you know, I didn't have any really work experience. I only had school experience when I got my position, doing some bird work. And one of the skills I put was, you know, just my own personal birding experience, and how I knew I could tell, you know, most birds by sight and call. And the person that was hiring was very attuned to that, and thought that, wow, that's very interesting, that we don't usually have that around here as far as an entry level position. So there's those little tiny skills. I put that I paid my way through school and I worked to pay myself through school, and that showed a little bit of, you know, additional, you know, determination maybe. So just those little things that really you can pick out on the cover letters and in the resumes really stand out. And sometimes we'll have, like, you know, we'll have 8 or 5, 6 applicants that we're like, these are really good looking applicants. They look great on paper. And then we'll have kind of the wild cards and say, like, well, this person doesn't have necessarily the experience you have, but look at this cover letter. Look at these kind of specific things that they listed. I want to interview them as well. And you may not end up getting the position, but you'll get interviews that way when you really can sell yourself.
Awesome. I bet you didn't think you were getting this many answers that you showed when you asked your question. I'll pass it next to Amy.
Well, what Brendan said, interviewing experience in itself is worth its weight in gold, especially if you lack that confidence. But I just wanted to say, if you get your foot in the door and you get an interview, leave them with something, like bring something tangible with you so that they remember afterwards has been very valuable to me and keeping me in their mind after they've done a string of interviews.
Absolutely, yeah. And sending a thank you note as well if you get an interview, you know, like have an email ready to send off and say thank you for your time. I found that that's made a really big difference. And I can tell everyone's very passionate and want to share their experience and their tips, because we've all been there, right? It's like you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting, or you're putting in so many applications and waiting to hear back. So very much appreciate your question and all the great feedback. Sean, did you have another question, or Corey, did you want to wrap us up? Sorry, we can't go on forever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, we could kind of be here all night, and it's been a fantastic discussion. And I know we'll probably be doing another one of these, so be on the lookout for that. If we didn't get to your question, feel free to connect with any of the panelists as well as us. And we'd be happy to answer those questions. And again, networking, use that network in those mentorships to propel yourself forward. And I just wanted to thank the panelists and everyone that participated in this tonight. And thank you all for your time. And again, to my co-facilitators, great job as well, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I hope you all have a great evening and a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Take care.